I'm Shawna Rosner, your host of In-House Counsel Chronicles. Today, my guest is Sarah Thomas. Sarah graduated from University of Arizona School of Law in 2008. She started her legal career in private practice and moved in-house in 2012 and has worked in various positions with healthcare companies. Currently, she is Chief Legal Officer for Bridge, a healthcare startup company she co-founded. I can't wait for Sarah to share her impressive in-house journey with us. Welcome to the podcast, Sarah.
Good morning. It's great to be here. Thank you so much.
I wanted to start off by asking you what made you go in-house from private practice. I know you went in-house pretty early in your career.
I didn't love the billable hours. I didn't love tracking my time, which I think many of us can relate to. I also found that while I had a lot of clients who I knew relatively well, I didn't know them as deeply as I wanted to. And I wasn't able to guide their businesses the same way I could if I understood the business from the inside out. And so that also really drove me to look for something new and different. And then bluntly, the law firm that I was with was going under, and it was time to find something new. And I was able to then redirect my career towards more of an in-house path.
When you started in private practice, were you in the healthcare space? And if not, what made you get into this healthcare space where you've been specializing?
I was not. And in fact, I spent most of my time up until going into healthcare trying to avoid healthcare. Both my parents are physicians. I grew up with everything healthcare being dinner table conversation, and I swore that that was not going to be my life. Famous last words. Turns out that I actually knew the space better than I realized. And the things I had gathered from those dinner table conversations over the years have really helped facilitate my career. And being able to speak the language in a different way because I understood it from my parents has also always helped. And so it was not my original goal. It was not my original path. I actually started in toxic tort litigation. I moved into more nursing home work and trying to get patients approved for Medicaid for nursing homes. So this was not my expected path, but once I found it, I can't imagine leaving it. It's been totally the right place for me.
Tell us how you did find it. How'd you get to those different positions in the healthcare space and to your current position?
There's been a little bit of jumping around, and especially once I started moving into the startup space. And there's a lot more movement between positions in the startup space than you would typically see elsewhere. So I first went in-house with a company that provided healthcare in jails and prisons nationwide. In fact, they were the largest provider of jail healthcare within the US and I think potentially the world. And so at various points, I had about a dozen patients who I was the sole legal contact for the operations team. And it was an incredible opportunity. I spent 5 years at a PE-backed company. I watched them go through a merger that moved me from one city across the country to another city. And it was a great experience and opportunity. But as many of those companies are run, there's not a lot of wiggle room. There's not a lot of growth. And after 5 years and opportunities to present growth plans to the general counsel and not getting much of traction there, it was time to look for something new. And Smile Direct Club was in its infancy in Nashville. And I was given the opportunity to be their founding general counsel. And that's something you don't say no to. Um, and I was with them for a while. They grew in just leaps and bounds in the time I was there. I think when I joined, it was still small at 600 employees. And by the time I left, we were, I think, between 2,000 and 2,500. So it was growing super rapidly. It was a great opportunity, but it was run by people who thought the law didn't necessarily apply to them. And that played out in and was the somewhat caused their eventual bankruptcy. And so I looked for another similar opportunity. And after a little bit of moving around, I ended up at the Pill Club. And the Pill Club felt like it hit my desires of supporting women's health, giving access to care. We enabled women to get access to birth control, especially during the pandemic, through telehealth. They didn't have to go anywhere. We owned and operated two pharmacies. So I got to see the pharmacy side of the business for the first time, which was absolutely amazing. And it was a lot of fun to see a company grow and also see where, again, some of the pitfalls and the things that they had done wrong, actually much more early in their growth opportunities that then we couldn't get out of. And so this was in situations where it was penny wise and pound foolish that prevented future growth of the company. Eventually, that company also went under. I had left before that time and there had been leadership changes. By the time I left, I was the last remaining executive from the prior leadership. And that was time for someone fresh to come in. When I left, though, I actually kept them as a client. And so, one of the things I have done in my career is frequently as I leave companies, I kind of end up staying on and helping them through transitions and through further support until they no longer need that or they've found somebody else to do it. So, I left from there and I went to Same Day Health. And Same Day was a really interesting opportunity. They were one of the largest COVID testing companies in the country. They ran 55 locations all across the US, had three different laboratories. So now got to learn laboratory side of the business. So I've done direct healthcare, telehealth, pharmacy, and lab, which really gives me a huge breadth within the healthcare space. And that was a company that was going through transitions. I came in after they had just gotten a $26 million settlement with the city and county of LA, and it was time to grow up. And I was brought in to formalize the legal and compliance department to get things into a place where the company could really continue to grow. But also at the same time, the COVID pandemic was starting to wane. And so what does that company look like as we no longer have COVID testing needs? There were now home tests that people could start to take that were being accepted. And so things were starting to change. So I oversaw quite a bit of transition, a corporate reorganization, lots of other work. And ultimately, the company decided that they had done a great thing and that they were going to wind down. And that wind down was actually probably one of the low points in my career. Laying off a huge number of people without warning is one of the worst things I've ever had to do. I swore I would never conduct layoffs in if you are on this call, you are laid off situation. But we had to lay off 400 people in one day, and there was no other way to do it. That was the definitely career low point. As that one wound down, I had a lot of opportunities to consult. I had been working I've actually done a podcast with Andreessen Horowitz. I had become their kind of go-to new company needs a telehealth attorney to help them get things started. And so my name got passed out to quite a few of them. And while Same Day still needed support, they did not need a full-time general counsel anymore. So I had quite a few companies I was working with, and one of those eventually turned into Bridge. And so when I started, they thought that they were going to continue to ramp, and they were right. And when we hit the fact that 80% of my time as a consultant was working for them, that was getting a little expensive, but it was time to move me in-house. So I joined the company that actually Bridge incubated out of. That was originally called Sunrise, spent some time there. And then the idea for Bridge really took over, and we made the decision to spin Bridge out of that company. And that was in February of last year. And that's what I've been doing since.
Amazing. You've been able to have an impact a lot of different places and make sense in the healthcare startup space that there are changes and challenges, but so much opportunity that can come with it that you've been able to take advantage of. I want to ask you more about what Bridge actually does.
So Bridge is really unique. We are a first of its kind telehealth enablement platform. So we have your typical MSO PC setup for those who live and breathe in this space. We have 4 professional corporations that cover all 50 states, and we have hundreds, close to 1,000 different contracts with payers. And we have built this platform that enables other telehealth companies to lease their providers into our company. They are fully credentialed and enrolled. they're credentialed within the company, then they're enrolled with the payer contracts. And it enables telehealth companies to go live with insurance on their platform in a matter of weeks. We have had companies go live from signing of their contract to go live date in under 30 days. And it gives them access now to nationwide telehealth. It enables them to reach a much broader group of patients. And we have, I think we're up to 15 different specialties on our platform. And so, from an access to care standpoint, it really enables patients all across the country to get access to really specialized care. And our average wait time for an appointment is between 2 and 3 days. So, it's very different to get into a specialist versus the 3 to 6 month wait period that people typically have. So I'm really excited. This is what happens when you have legal on board as a co-founder. You do things a little bit differently. We sought a OIG opinion on our business model. And I can say that on June 11th, the OIG published a favorable opinion on our first of kind business model, which really gave us the green light to go forward and continue to build this company.
That's amazing. So Bridge sounds like you're really changing the insurance landscape. Is that right?
The goal is to make it easier for everybody else to provide insurance covered care. The way I look at it is telehealth as a idea was supposed to enable access to care. It was supposed to streamline things. It was supposed to reduce wait times and travel times for patients and all of these things. But it has been so hard for especially telehealth standalone companies to get insurance contracts. And most of them don't have the time or the finances in order to devote to getting those contracts. As I said, we have close to 1,000. And with that number, we cover 80% of commercially covered lives and 65% of Medicare Advantage covered lives. So we still have more ways to go to get all the contracts we need to cover 100% of the US. And if you are a small company trying to enable insurance covered care for your patients, you don't have the bandwidth to go get this. So I feel like this is finally bridging that last frontier of what telehealth was supposed to be for patients. And it's a really exciting place to be as a result.
Absolutely. I think that I heard that Bridge has a recent partnership with Canvas Medical. What is Canvas Medical and what is that partnership?
So Canvas is a EHR, an electronic health record system. And what makes it unique for Bridge is that by partnering with Canvas, it makes it much easier for our telehealth partners to go live in the system. There's less work. So one of the unique things about Bridge as well is that we are EHR agnostic. Your providers, our partners' providers, can work in any EHR and we can work with you. It's a matter of lift, though. The more integrations that we already have, the better. And we are very integrated with Canvas. So if our partners choose to use Canvas as their EHR, then it makes going live with Bridge even more streamlined.
So I want to go back to something you've mentioned, and that was the COVID pandemic and how it's impacted your career and the companies you work with. What lasting impact have you seen COVID have on telemedicine?
I think telemedicine took a leap in its acceptance in every manner: patient side, regulator side, and payer side across the board. I think prior to COVID, there were a lot of questions about limitations on telemedicine and whether or not telemedicine could really treat patients as well as seeing them in person. Don't get me wrong, there are still things that you require an in person visit. Sorry, ladies, we still have to go get our pap smears, and that requires an in person visit. It does not work via telehealth. But there's a lot of other things that can be done via telehealth that does not require that in person element. And COVID forced us, due to our home restrictions and other things, to reevaluate our view of it. And the acceptance of telemedicine since COVID has drastically changed. Telemedicine, though, is always on the chopping block every time there is a budget bill. Medicare telemedicine authorization is part of the federal budget bill every time it is expiring. So it's something that we all hold our breath on in the industry to make sure it gets renewed. So far, it's never been a problem, but it's something that we've made huge leaps, but we're still not 100% there. It's not totally codified. From the payer perspective, I think there's so much demand from a patient side that that can't go away. But they've made it harder again for telemedicine companies to get in network contracts. So there's been a little bit of a backslide in the last year and a half or so on whether or not telemedicine companies can get telehealth only payer contracts. And so it's part of why having those legacy contracts is even more important.
I saw a 2024 study that was conducted on telehealth utilization, and it revealed that 22% of adults reported using telehealth services in the prior 4 weeks. Do you project that this statistic has changed in 2025? And where do you see it going in the future?
I think it's going to continue to grow. I would venture a small guess that if you broke down the types of services received in the prior 4 weeks, that a huge number of those were mental health services. And that's been one of the greatest growth elements. And finally, getting access to care for mental health for patients across the country, which is huge. Um, we have a on Bridge, we have a psychiatric platform on our that we support, and getting access to psychiatric care has been one of the biggest blockers, and telehealth has drastically changed that. There is no reason why you need an in-person appointment for psychiatric care. You may need some labs; those can be conducted as well, but that does not require a in-person appointment for you to be ordered labs. So I think it's going to continue to grow drastically. The need for care as we continue to have an aging population continues to increase, the need for specialty care, but also our aging population is more tech savvy. And so they are more willing to accept telehealth care as they continue to age and need more support.
I want to move a little bit into compliance. And if you could tell us about the challenges to compliance in the telehealth space.
Telehealth is as complex as in person care, if not more. So think about HIPAA in a telehealth space. HIPAA in an office setting has enough issues and concerns. And now, when everybody is remote, how do you make sure that you are HIPAA compliant in every way, shape, and form? How do you make sure that the providers are using the right platforms and that nobody from their family is walking behind them as they're treating a patient? Separately, the laws have not always caught up to telehealth. And so we still have laws on the books that are really related to in person care when it comes to healthcare administration that you're navigating the best way you can. Where is the care occurring? I don't know if everybody has seen the commercial for Amazon Medical, and it's a woman on a plane who has a UTI and she's getting meds prescribed. That commercial drives my compliance mind crazy. Where is her point of care? What state is she in when she's receiving this care? Those things are really important. How do you verify that your patient is who they say they are? This is different from showing up at a doctor's office and handing an ID over. Those sorts of elements are different in a telehealth setting. And it gets even more complex when you're dealing with kids and making sure that pediatric consents are done properly. It also gets complex when you're dealing with other languages, making sure that the provider is either fully fluent or has a medical certification for their speaking in another language, or making sure that you have the right interpreter services. But getting those interpreter services looped in on a telehealth visit is different than a phone call that happens when you're in office. So all of these are unique things that they are one step removed from what you see in in-person care, but they're just a little bit different because of the telehealth setting. And another example, GLP-1s. So making sure we have seen a ton of GLP-1s in telehealth care. How do we make sure that the person who we're prescribing a GLP-1 to really needs it? How do we make sure that that weight that they're giving us is actually their weight? So full body pictures, full bodies on Zoom, those sorts of things to make sure that the person is actually in need of the services that are being provided.
A lot to think about.
Yes.
Or what is asynchronous telemedicine and what
Ace
challenges does that present on the legal front?
Async has so many pros and cons. Async is the legal termination is store and forward, but it is basically sending something to your doctor. The doctor looks at it. There's no phone call, there's no video call, and then the doctor sends something back to you. So it is think of it as like medical texting is probably the best way to describe it. And some of asynchronous is great. It's the follow-up visit questions that you can send via Epic's platform, for example, has messaging services. That's technically asynchronous care. Asynchronous care can also be an initial patient visit and prescription. So the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology has come out and said asynchronous care for the prescription of birth control is totally appropriate within the standard of care. That's great. Guess what? Insurance companies will not pay for a new patient asynchronous visit. In fact, there is no billing code for that visit. So if you are a telehealth company and this is how you are working with your patients, you can't be in network with insurance. Or if you are, there's no way to bill it. And so there's still blockers to getting reimbursed for that care. Asynchronous care as a follow up visit does have billing codes. They pay between like $5 and $10. So they're almost not worth the time and energy to bill them by the time you think about the billing team's time and everything else. So the insurers have set it up to their own benefit in a way that is preventing some access to care still to this day. There's a lot of benefits to asynchronous care. It continues to expand access to care when appropriate. It's not appropriate in all scenarios. But the fact that it's not billable or not effectively billable really still serves as a blocker for many companies and patients.
That shed a lot of light in the situation for me. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
As I use some of that,
I think
recently.
many of us do. And it's really, and so now also you understand why it's the nurse who's responding to you maybe on the, in network platform because the doctor if the doctor does it, it's not going to be it's not a billable visit or not effectively a billable visit. So the nurse will go have the conversation and come back, but that's a lot less time.
What do you think is on the horizon for telemedicine regulation?
Well, the biggest thing that we still are grappling with is the Ryan Hate Act. So the Ryan Hate Act has to do with controlled substances, and it was effectively it requires an in-person visit to prescribe controlled substances. And it was effectively suspended during COVID and has continued to have a suspension. There were proposed rules that were supposed to go into effect in May of 2024. There was so much feedback and commentary on that that they actually pulled it back. The current suspension and revised regulations are in place until December 31st of this year. And so we're really waiting to see what's next and what is going to happen here. Again, patients now expect that they can receive some of these medications via telehealth. Again, a psychiatric visit. Many psychiatric meds are controlled substances. Is that psychiatric hour-long visual visit any different than going in person? Arguably not. And what does that mean for somebody's ability to get access to these meds that they need for mental health or for anything else? And at the same time, states have put in a ton of regulations about controlled substance prescribing anyway. So it's much safer in the grand scheme of things. Obviously, we still have problems and we've got ways to go. But the biggest thing I see right now that we're tracking is Ryan Hate.
It'll be interesting to follow, see where
Yes,
it goes.
very. There's a lot of companies that are relying, and not just companies. There are large health systems that do appointments via telehealth that utilize this current suspension.
Let's switch gears for a minute. Talk about how you utilize outside counsel and what makes for a good partnership, in your opinion, between in house and outside counsel.
So It obviously has ebbed and flowed during my career and the companies that I'm with and the needs. I use outside counsel probably, I'd say, in three different ways. So, first, I will say I am a healthcare regulatory attorney and litigator. I am not a corporate attorney. And that is the first place that I will say I need help. And so I go get help on that area. The second one from a regulatory side is it a new area I haven't touched? Or if it's an area that I know, sometimes having that for a regulator who might check me later, that outside counsel's stamp of approval is different than my evaluation as in-house counsel. My evaluation of in-house counsel sometimes gets a little bit of taken with a grain of salt by a regulator. So I'll go to somebody else in order to get their stamp because it's going to mean more in the future in the event that it becomes a question to somebody. So those are the two primary ways. And then obviously litigation when in the event that I need to, unfortunately go down that path or have been put in that path. But those are really the primary ways I try to keep things in house as much as possible because, again, for the same reason I went in house, I understand our business better than any outside counsel is going to. And so I would like to have somebody who understands it deeply making the decisions. What makes a good partnership? Timeliness is probably the number one thing that matters most. And again, understanding the business and understanding our risk profile. I think what we frequently in-house counsel will anytime you get a group of us in a room, the first thing we will all complain about is non-business focused legal advice from outside counsel. It is black and white. And we in-house don't live in black and white. We live in many, many, many shades of gray. And when I have counsel who can help work me through those shades of gray and understand where we might land on a risk profile platform, that is the most helpful support that I can get. And so once you find those folks, they're worth their weight in gold.
Really great opinion that you shared with us on that. And I hear a lot from in-house counsel about the primary or a very important part of their role being the risk assessment. So having your outside counsel in line with you and being able to give you advice, it makes a lot of sense. If you were to go back in time to give yourself advice as an attorney who just graduated from law school, what would it be?
Don't expect that your current path is your permanent path. And actually, on our first day of law school orientation at U of A, I forget who, somebody told us that the average attorney changes their career focus 5 times in their career. And that was actually one of the most helpful pieces of advice that anybody ever gave me. And I didn't remember it when I first graduated, but have remembered it since. And it's okay. When I graduated in 2008, graduated as the economy tanked, as attorneys were being laid off left, right, and sideways. I was in San Francisco. There was one day that there were 750 attorneys put out on the street in one day in San Francisco. Take what comes, don't have an ego about it, and you can build your career. If I had told the, young 25-year-old at that point in time that I could build a career that was a chief legal officer of a company I co-founded, I think I would have looked at myself and laughed because also co-founding a company was never in my list of things that I planned on doing. But if you work really hard, and it's not just hard work, it's caring about the work and finding something that you actually really care about doing every day, because working hard is great, but you work differently when you have a purpose behind what you're doing. So figure out what that purpose is and then drive towards it. And for me, my purpose is access to care. And that's what I feel like Bridge enables and allows. I found that purpose while working at Pill Club because we made orthodontics affordable. Sorry, Smile Direct Club. We made orthodontics affordable for patients who had never thought that that was an opportunity for them. And hearing those stories changed my perspective on things. And so I found my purpose and then I've been able to build and grow on that. And that has been the best thing ever. But for that 25-year-old kid, take whatever comes and just know that if you make the best of whatever the maybe not great situation is, you're going to grow and use that to continue to propel yourself forward.
Great advice. And in close, I want to ask if you have any different advice for in-house counsel who are looking to make a move into a higher level position.
I think the most important thing is learning outside of your current scope. So, my day to day now includes all the normal things you would find in legal. So, everything from business growth, risk assessment, contract reviews, all of that stuff. I also do all of our HR work. I also do all of our compliance work. And so, as you move into higher level positions, your scope and the breadth of what's going to be under you is going to increase. And if you want to do more, you're going to have to learn things that are outside of your current comfort zone and the things you know. I started as a litigator. I then went to healthcare regulatory. Who would have thought that that would then enable the rest of this path? And it's because every time I got the opportunity or someone dumped something else in my lap, I figured out a way to make that my new specialty and add that to this big basket of things that now I can answer generally without second guessing, without that question mark. And so if you want to keep growing, that by definition is going to mean learning things outside of your current scope and if you start looking at the job descriptions for that next level, what else is on there and how do you get that experience today so that you can move up?
Well, it's all the time we have for today. I feel like I could continue to talk to you for a lot longer and learn so much more from you. I've learned a lot. Been great having you on today. Thanks so much, Sarah.
It's been great being here. Thanks so much.